The city that never sleeps has witnessed countless historic moments, yet there are evenings when the sheer weight of anticipation transforms the very air of Manhattan into something electric, almost tangible. For decades, the towering structure of Madison Square Garden has stood as a secular cathedral of entertainment, a colossal arena where legendary athletes bleed for victory and iconic musicians etch their names into the archives of history. On any given night, the echoes of screeching hockey skates and the thunderous bounce of basketballs fill this 20,000-seat coliseum. Surrounded by the familiar sight of plastic stadium seats, utilitarian wooden paneling, and the sterile glare of commercial spotlights. It is a place defined by its raw public energy, a venue designed to amplify the roar of a massive crowd. But on a recent Friday, the Grand Arena fell silent to the public, undergoing a metamorphosis so profound and secretive that it defied the imagination of even the most seasoned New York onlookers. A multi-million-dollar veil of absolute secrecy descended upon the heart of the city, pulling together a gathering of global elites under conditions of total digital lockdown. This was not merely another high-profile concert or a standard gathering of the rich and famous, it was the unfolding of a modern fairy tale. An event so carefully guarded that even those driving past the exterior digital screens had no inkling of the historic transformation occurring just feet away behind closed doors. To understand the magnitude of what transpired inside those heavily gua-redded walls, one must look at the collision of two astronomical cultural forces that have captivated the global consciousness for the better part of 3 years. In one corner stands the undisputed queen of the modern music industry, a lyrical genius whose every word is dissected by millions and whose record-breaking global tours have literally shifted local economies. In the other stands an elite titan of American football, a champion whose physical prowess on the field is matched only by his charismatic presence off it. Their crossing of paths was a cultural earthquake, fusing the massive, fiercely loyal universe of pop music fandom with the high-stakes, traditional world of professional sports. For 36 months, the world watched as these two separate realities blended, creating a media frenzy that tested the boundaries of privacy and public obsession. Yet, despite living under the constant, unrelenting glare of paparazzi cameras and stadium lights, they managed to plan a convergence that would redefine the concept of a high society event. If you want to stay informed on how these monumental cultural moments unfold and receive exclusive deep dives into the stories shaping our world, consider subscribing to the channel now as we pull back the curtain on this extraordinary narrative. The journey from a modest, middle-class suburb in Ohio to the absolute pinnacle of global celebrity culture is paved with challenges. And for the family members who watched this romance blossom, the reality of entering this hyper-visible world has been nothing short of surreal. As the afternoon sun began to dip below the Manhattan skyline on that fateful Friday, a carefully orchestrated logistical operation commenced. Approximately 1,000 guests, comprising the absolute vanguard of Hollywood royalty, musical legends, and sports icons, began to arrive through covert entrances. The security protocols were absolute and uncompromising. Upon entry, every single individual, regardless of their status, fame, or net worth, was required to surrender their mobile phones and sign strict, ironclad non-disclosure agreements. In an era dominated by instant social media uploads and constant digital connectivity, the organizers established a total information blackout, ensuring that what was about to happen would be preserved purely in the memories of those present, or perhaps captured by a professional film crew whose presence was hinted at by mysterious notices outside the building. Guests were ushered away from the standard concourses and directed toward a stunning, custom-built, coral-colored staircase. Walking up those steps felt like crossing a threshold into an entirely different dimension. The standard stadium infrastructure completely vanished, replaced by an intricate labyrinth of passages adorned with ethereal, flowing drapes that softened the grand scale of the arena. Along these hidden corridors, the couple displayed never-before-seen personal photographs, offering their closest confidence an intimate, chronological look at their private journey over the last 3 years. Far away from the flashing cameras of the public eye, the air inside the transformed space was thick with the scent of thousands of fresh blossoms, carrying a gentle fragrance that completely erased the usual athletic aroma of the arena. The design team had achieved the impossible, turning a brutalist sports venue into a whimsical living garden. Towering trees and lush rose bushes climbed toward the rafters, concealing the plastic seats and concrete pillars under a canopy of vibrant green and delicate petals. At the center of this botanical paradise stood a giant, custom-built chapel that looked as though it had been plucked from a classic storybook and dropped into the center of New York City. As the exclusive guest list filtered through a soaring archway at the end of the draped passages, the soulful, uplifting strains of a classic anthem filled the room, setting a tone that balanced profound romance with an undercurrent of pure joy. The sheer scale of the production was staggering, with insiders later estimating the costs to be in the realm of $50 million, a sum that allowed for the complete rewriting of what a private event could look like in the 21st century. Yet, despite the immense wealth and star power concentrated in the room, the atmosphere remained intensely personal, charged with an emotional weight that left even the most famous attendees visibly moved for the groom's family. Arriving at this breathtaking spectacle was a moment of profound contrast. Having raised their children in a quiet, grounded Midwestern environment where life revolved around school, community, and local sports, the sudden thrust into the absolute stratosphere of global pop stardom was a dizzying adjustment. Over the past 3 years, they had gradually accustomed themselves to the massive stadiums, the security details, and the intense public interest that accompanied their son's new relationship. They had attended packed concerts and sat in luxury suites, adjusting to a level of fame that few humans ever experience. But nothing could have truly prepared them for the sheer, overwhelming magnificence of Madison Square Garden on this particular night. The transition from a quiet life in Ohio to standing in a $50 million enchanted forest surrounded by a who's who of the entertainment world was a powerful reminder of how completely their lives had changed. The matriarch of the family would later describe the experience using the only word that seemed fitting, calling it completely magical. As the final guests took their places amidst the roses and the drapes, a legendary comedic actor stepped forward to take his position at the altar, ready to guide the couple through the solemn promises they were about to make, signaling that the ceremony was finally ready to begin. The anticipation inside the botanical sanctuary reached a fever pitch as the star-studded audience fell silent, watching the altar where the officiant stood ready to guide the proceedings. The choice of an officiant had been a surprise to many, yet it made perfect sense to those who knew the couple intimately. One of Hollywood's most beloved comedic actors, a household name celebrated for his brilliant film career and sharp wit, had accepted the monumental task without a single moment of hesitation. When the couple had initially approached him with the request, he expressed that it was a tremendous honor, immediately clearing his busy schedule to ensure he could anchor their special day. Standing at the front of the magnificent, tree-covered chapel, his familiar presence brought a sense of grounded warmth to an otherwise overwhelming atmosphere. He stood as the initial anchor for what was to be a ceremony of unprecedented emotional depth, waiting alongside the 36-year-old groom who was visibly fighting to maintain his composure under the weight of the moment. The elite athlete, accustomed to facing down fierce opponents in front of 80,000 screaming football fans, found himself experiencing a completely different kind of pressure as he stood clad in exquisite custom Christian Dior haute couture. Waiting for the arrival of his bride, the silence grew deeper, broken only by the delicate instrumental strains of a familiar melody that resonated deeply with everyone in the room. It was a beautiful classical rendition of the bride's own legendary hit song, a timeless track about young love and enduring romance that had defined the early chapters of her historic career. As the music swelled, the grand doors opened to reveal the 36-year-old pop megastar, looking absolutely breathtaking in a magnificent, custom-designed Christian Dior haute couture gown that seemed to float effortlessly through the whimsical garden. Flanking her on either side were her new nieces, the beloved young daughters of the groom's brother and sister-in-law, who walked with careful pride as they gently tossed fresh flower petals onto the aisle. The sight of the global icon walking toward her future husband, surrounded by family and framed by soaring arches of living greenery, created an instantly iconic image that moved many in the audience to tears. The groom kept it together as best as he could, but as his eyes locked onto his bride, the nervous energy gave way to pure, raw emotion, setting the stage for a ceremony that would balance immense grandeur with profound vulnerability. The exchange of vows proved to be the emotional core of the entire multi-million-dollar evening, a moment so raw and genuine that it completely shattered the polished veneer of celebrity culture. Those in attendance later described the promises as a perfect blend of serious commitment, deep vulnerability, and affectionate humor, capturing the true essence of their unique bond. A particularly poignant moment occurred when the groom, looking directly into his bride's eyes, made a solemn, fiercely protective promise to stand by her side and shield her from the chaotic storms of the world forever. The weight of his words, delivered with a trembling voice, caused a noticeable wave of emotion to ripple through the chapel, with the bride herself visibly wiping away tears during this deeply personal exchange. Prominent television hosts and family members alike would later confirm that there was hardly a dry eye in the entire venue, noting how extraordinary it was to witness two of the most famous people on the planet completely lay bare their hearts. Laughing and crying in equal measure before their closest friends and family, this deeply moving and traditional ceremony stood in stark, fascinating contrast to the raucous, high-energy events that had taken place just 24 hours earlier during the rehearsal dinner. Held within the sleek, modern confines of the Infosys Theater located inside the Madison Square Garden complex, Thursday night's celebration had been a much more uninhibited affair, featuring a guest list of roughly 100 of the couple's closest confidants. The highlight of the evening, which quickly became a major talking point among the attendees, was a highly entertaining speech delivered by a prominent television creator and writer who had been one of the bride's closest friends for well over a decade. Known for her sharp, unfiltered humor, the writer delivered a characteristically bold and irreverent quip about the nature of American football, comparing the sport's hyper-masculine on-field displays to an elaborate, theatrical reenactment. The provocative line immediately drew a starkly divided response from the exclusive crowd, eliciting a mixture of shocked gasps from some of the traditional sports figures and roaring laughter from the entertainment elite. The bride, however, was absolutely delighted by the comedic audacity, loudly declaring her longtime pal to be an absolute genius for bringing such fearless energy to the wedding festivities. Once the solemnity of the Friday ceremony concluded, the atmosphere shifted seamlessly into a legendary celebration that would stretch long into the early hours of Saturday morning. The $500 million transformed arena became the ultimate party venue, where the strict non-disclosure agreements and the total absence of phones allowed the guest list to truly let their guard down. The star-studded gathering represented an unprecedented cross-section of global culture, featuring iconic supermodels like Gigi Hadid, pop superstars like Selena Gomez, and acclaimed actors like Brad Pitt, all mingling effortlessly in the enchanted indoor forest. The groom took great pride in playing the ultimate host, casually navigating the room to introduce his longtime friends and teammates from the professional football world to powerful television and film executives. This specific mixing of industries did not go unnoticed, sparking immediate fevered whispers among the guests regarding the potential future of what they were witnessing. The presence of mysterious notices posted outside the venue earlier in the week, combined with the mandatory legal releases that every attendee had to sign upon entering the building, added immense fuel to the speculation that this entire magical weekend was being meticulously captured for an upcoming documentary project. The entertainment for the evening was nothing short of historic, featuring legendary live performances that turned the reception into an exclusive, once-in-a-lifetime concert. Guests found themselves dancing to the timeless voices of rock royalty as iconic musicians took to the stage to celebrate the newlyweds. Among the standouts of the night was a beloved Irish talk show host, who unexpectedly became one of the absolute focal points of the entire reception. The bride had personally promised him an invitation during an appearance on his international chat show the previous year, and she stayed true to her word. The charming host, perhaps unaware of just how massive his popularity was among American celebrities, found himself completely swarmed by Hollywood A-listers and music industry titans who eagerly queued up just to converse with him. As the night progressed and the legendary performances echoed through the hidden passages of Madison Square Garden, the sheer exhaustion of managing a multi-day extravaganza of this magnitude began to settle over the couple, marking the end of a whirlwind chapter and the beginning of a historic union that the world was dying to discover. As the final notes of the historic musical performances began to fade into the early hours of Saturday morning, the reality of what had just occurred began to ripple outward from the locked confines of the arena into the grand expanse of New York City. For over 24 hours, the world outside had been left to speculate, but as the weekend progressed, the veil of secrecy slowly dissolved into a series of grand public confirmations. The first definitive sign appeared on the exterior of Madison Square Garden itself, where the massive digital screens that usually advertise upcoming sports matches and sold-out concerts suddenly flashed a vibrant, joyful message into the night air. announcing to every passerby on the Manhattan streets that the two megastars were officially married. Shortly after this striking visual confirmation, the bride's longtime publicist, who had been an anchor of support throughout the entire multi-day operation, sent a detailed official communication to the media. This official statement finally confirmed the finer details that the public had been desperate to know, validating the central role of the beloved comedic actor as the official wedding officiant and formally crediting the world-renowned fashion house behind the exquisite custom haute couture garments that had defined the visual elegance of the day. With the grand celebration formally concluded and the massive logistical machinery of Madison Square Garden winding down, the immense physical and emotional toll of organizing such an unprecedented global event became apparent. Insiders close to the newlyweds revealed that the sheer scale of the multi-day extravaganza had left the couple completely exhausted, prompting them to cancel any plans for an official after-party on Saturday night in favor of immediate, undisturbed rest. The physical escape from the city was as swift and coordinated as the wedding itself. The bride's luxurious private jet was spotted departing the metropolitan area and touching down in the quiet, scenic landscapes of Connecticut later that afternoon. This sudden movement immediately sparked intense speculation among dedicated observers that the newlyweds were heading directly to the bride's famed $17 million coastal mansion located in nearby Rhode Island, a legendary historic property known for its breathtaking ocean views and heavily fortified privacy. As evening fell over the massive estate, onlookers noted that the lights inside the grand residence were fully illuminated, with a dedicated team of elite security personnel standing vigilant guard at the front gates, ensuring that the couple's first nights as husband and wife would be spent in absolute tranquility, far away from the prying eyes of the global media yet. For a creative force as prolific and driven as this legendary singer, a period of complete rest is rarely long-lasting, as her personal life and artistic career have always been intricately intertwined. Behind the scenes, the wheels of her vast musical empire were already turning, with industry insiders revealing that several key creative collaborators who have worked on her most successful past albums have already been contacted to begin developing advanced conceptual designs for upcoming music videos. This rapid return to the creative process aligns perfectly with reports that the 14-time Grammy winner has been actively channeling the intense emotions of her recent personal milestones into a brand new body of musical work. According to close sources, the artist is a naturally prolific writer who found it completely instinctual to document her every experience throughout the intense wedding planning process, capturing the raw vulnerability of the unexpected marriage proposal and the deep emotional weight of her journey to the altar. For an artist who has built an unparalleled career on radical honesty and deep connection with her audience, capturing these monumental life transitions in her lyrics is more than just work. It is an essential way of sharing her true soul with the millions who have followed her journey from the very beginning. To truly appreciate why this union matters so deeply to the broader cultural landscape, one must look back at the incredible parallel paths these two individuals traveled before their worlds inevitably collided. The groom's journey began far away from the glamorous spotlights of Manhattan or Hollywood, rooted firmly in the grounded, hardworking community of a modest suburb in Ohio. Raised in an environment where family, dedication, and sportsmanship were the cornerstones of daily life, he and his brother pushed each other to achieve greatness, eventually rising to become absolute titans of professional American football. His career was defined by a relentless work ethic, a fierce loyalty to his teammates, and an infectious, larger-than-life personality that made him a beloved figure across the nation long before he ever met his future wife. His path was one of physical triumph, defined by the grit of the gridiron and the traditional values of the American heartland, making his ultimate ascent to the absolute pinnacle of global celebrity culture a truly fascinating evolution for the family who watched him grow. Conversely, the bride's journey to that flower-covered chapel in New York City was a masterclass in artistic evolution and unmatched cultural dominance. Emerging as a teenage prodigy with a guitar and a gift for storytelling, she systematically rewrote the rules of the global music industry, transitioning across musical genres with an effortless grace that baffled critics and enchanted fans. For nearly 2 decades, she navigated the treacherous waters of global fame, enduring intense public scrutiny, navigating complex industry battles, and transforming her personal triumphs and heartbreaks into a universal soundtrack for a generation. Her journey was not merely about creating hit records. It was about building a massive, fiercely protective community of millions of supporters who saw their own lives reflected in her poetry. By the time she stood at the altar in Madison Square Garden, she had evolved from a country singer into a historical cultural phenomenon, an institution whose influence extended into economics, fashion, and social discourse across every continent. When these two separate, monumental journeys finally converged, it created something far greater than a standard celebrity romance. It became a historical cultural milestone that unified two core pillars of modern entertainment. The union represented a perfect bridge between the traditional, high-energy world of professional athletics and the deeply emotional, boundary-pushing universe of contemporary pop music. It proved that even in an age of absolute media saturation, where privacy is nearly impossible to maintain, it is still possible to create a space for genuine vulnerability, true romance, and profound family connection. As the pink digital screens of Madison Square Garden dimmed and the newlyweds began their private life together behind the secure walls of their coastal sanctuary, the world was left with the indelible image of a modern fairy tale realized. It was an event that honored the rich history